Hello and welcome to the Warhammer Podcast, episode 169. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
I said that line and the dog just laid the fuck down. Even he has a Pavlovian response to the beginning of an episode. He's like, oh, we're going to be here a while.
Yeah, get comfortable.
They're going to yap. Dog's a zoomer.
Yeah, right.
But on today's episode, we're shot calling. This is the beginning of June. We are basically exactly 12 months from when we expect 11th edition to be hitting. So we've got a pair of episodes, they're not going to be back to back, but a pair of episodes prepared for this month that are basically us doing some shot calling. And the first of them, we're figuring out what the next new faction that will be added to 40k will be.
Sounds good. All right, so like you said in the intro, not like exactly shot calling 11th, but I think both of us expect that the next new faction is going to be in 11th.
Yeah, I would expect it to be closer to 3 years from right now, about 2 years into 11th edition if it's going to be then. That tends to be when we get whatever the new range is for, like during 9th we got Votann and World Eaters, during 10th we got EC.
It works out reasonably well because towards the end of an edition, things are starting to get, there's less hype, there's less like excitement about what's going on. So, all right, let's release a new faction, drum up some hype, and then release the next edition and just keep, rolling with it.
And then we'll fail to support it after that.
That is one of the other, yeah.
We'll talk about it throughout the episode, but the goal of this episode is not to dream up a faction. We did do that of our dream editions to 40k, I want to say 2 years ago now.
It's been a little while.
But it was a fun episode, but that was more like just us wanting stuff. This is us trying to actually come up with what is most likely.
Yeah, no more magical Christmas land, any wish you want is fine. This is like, all right, realistically, what could be possible?
Right. If we're getting a new codex and a new range to sell everybody, what are they cooking up right now in the office? And from a manufacturing standpoint, this is actually pretty interesting to talk about here of if it's in 3 years, that's about the turnaround time I expect of like they would be in the design phase right now for what you will see as a product in about 3 years, because they've got to get everything designed, get it all tested, then actually set up manufacturing for it, and then actually get it out, get all of that done, get all of your rules made, and get all of your books printed and shipped overseas, and all of your models shipped everywhere after they're made, get the packaging designed in the meantime and all that. It's a long process. So this actually might, timing wise, be hilarious for a GW employee whoever clicks this.
Yeah, I imagine that like they've got, sketches and design mock-ups for basically everything that we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
Because that's something that you have access to and you do just regularly of like, okay, take some time and brainstorm some wild ideas and maybe we'll pursue it further.
And every faction we're talking about today, none of these are going to be big surprises. We're talking about the most likely things. All of these exist in lore. They will probably appear in books between now and then. They will appear in video games. I'm sure they've got art assets already made for most of these. Maybe Borrelia showing some off from a decade ago.
But I do think that now, like you said, like 3 years, 4 years is about the time that you start taking those random sketches and designs from years past, pull them all out and start like, all right, let's settle in and actually make models. But yeah, where do we want to start? I think there's a couple of the very obvious ones.
Yeah, let's start with like extremely likely stuff and then we'll get into the weeds as we keep going, where it's like, look, this probably ain't next, but at least it's in the long list.
All right, if we're going to do that, then let's go with Dark Mechanicum.
I think both of us would say this is the most likely candidate for a new faction. And I guess from a rule standpoint here, we're going with something that would be a new codex, not something that's like an expansion of a range, like expanding Drukhari out more. This is us saying like this will be like Votann, like World Eaters, a full new faction in the game, even if some of them partially exist already as like a thing you could do in another faction.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the like World Eaters, Emperor's Children kind of would make sense on that of like, yeah, there's some holdovers from previous stuff, but like it's a new range, new codex, mechanics, that kind of thing.
And I think Dark Mech is probably just number one as far as things that exist and are talked about in current lore that don't have models.
And I think it's primarily on the mind because like they've done some previews in like the past year or two or whatever that like, oh my god, they're gonna do it finally, right? And then
yeah, Vashtor being the famous one where everyone thought Vashtor was the beginning of Dark Mech.
Yeah, and then like they've got some Legions Imperialis models that are like, ooh.
Oh, when they announced the 30k Dark Mech, yep.
And so clearly they have, you know, designers and artists in-house that are keeping these ideas fresh. They're working on stuff that would be themed in the same style. So it's not one of those where it's like, oh, but all we've been doing is Space Marines for the last 8 years. We're going to have to figure out how to do anything else again, right?
This is the break between Forge World required 500 different old Marine models.
So yeah, I think this would be a top tier contender, and like from a like lore aspect, I think people love it. I don't know anywhere near as much as I probably want to because like it seems so cool.
So Dark Mechanicus is weird because as someone who does read a bunch of lore, it's how I assume if I were to go back and like read a bunch of pre-Admech Imperium lore, the Admech are, where it is like if chaos is there, there will be a Dark Mechanicus guy.
Right.
There's just gonna be one around or two or whatever, and they will be a character within the plot and will be your techie dude.
Because like they still have to maintain some of their vehicles and tech and gear and stuff like that.
If you have an Admech book, a Dark Mech guy will show up sometimes, like spoilers, but there's one in a call book.
Shock.
I know. Truly shocking, riveting information. Admech versus Dark Mech.
But, like, I mean, that shows, like, it is a thing in 40K. It's not out of the fucking left field.
Yeah, but it's constantly there, but it's not like they're talking about how they're fielding armies, right? Because it's like they're not selling them yet. So the lore, because the lore is just an excuse to sell us toys, the lore has not caught up to that. So what will happen is it will be the shift as soon as they start wanting to sell the models. We'll get snippets of lore about them fielding armies, and then it will be, here's your book where, oh my god, the Dark Mechanicus are taking over the planet and Vashtor's involved and Bellicor shows up with a steel chair and all that shit happens, right?
Right. There'll be less of the like background character that's trying to keep things together and being more of, oh, we're gonna invade planets kind of thing.
Guy Haley will have his like required at gunpoint scenes where he goes from an interesting story to, and then they shot the Mark 36 bolter that is available for $39.99 right now. It's so good, it can give you an extra shooting phase.
Something like that.
I love Guy Haley, but I gotta give him shit for the way he writes those scenes. Once you understand that, you'll never unsee it in those books. It's fine. Clearly, the man dislikes bolter porn as much as I do because it's never relevant to the rest of the book, and it always feels like it's at gunpoint.
Yeah, but like Admech already has a pretty weird aesthetic. There's a bunch of spindly bits and like extra limbs and stuff, so like making it chaos, because like, you know, you've got your Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights, and like Chaos Knights are just add spikes essentially. It's not going to be quite that easy.
I fully expect we're getting that. I would put money just from a standpoint of evil businessman, right? Like putting on our project manager caps right now.
Sure.
To be the true scum of the earth. Nothing to do with my workday today.
No, definitely not.
You're going to want the ability to either have zero work or very little work, like an upgrade sprue, to throw in a kit and make it a Dark Mechanicus kit from an Admech kit. Because the first thing you're going to ask is, how do I maximize my profit margin versus my cost in this project?
Right, and so you use previously existing whatever and just add on to it.
Yeah, like they're not going to use call, but they're going to use one of the, well, maybe not the vehicles, just because of how that works. They might use like a Skitarii kit, but this time it comes with a little halvesy sprue in addition, and now it's the Dark Mech Skitarii kit.
Yeah.
And that'll be the difference, is it's just filled with guns that are evil and make you explode.
I think I could see that for Skitarii. scary. But like a lot of the robots, like Castellan robots, you gotta do something.
That's where I think vehicle-wise, they would not do it, because vehicle-wise, they'll focus on demon engines, and that's where I think you're gonna get CSM crossover of, I bet, the Forge Fiend and Mauler Fiend are freebies, where now their dark mechanic is, and it's going to be like the Rhino for Imperium right now, where you end up where everyone has the Forge Fiend and Mauler Fiend, Rip Bozo EC, but the rest of us.
Thanks.
And I expect it'll be like that, where Dark Mech will introduce more demon engines that will not just be kits for them, that will be chaos replacements for current Imperium models that just get some spikes thrown on them, to try to make it feel more like a super faction identity of like, these guys use monster mechs.
Right.
These guys use shitty tanks from World War One. Sometimes with hover tech to make them slightly cool.
Yeah. Now, I think that would fix some of the like concerns on like, how do you properly market this to somebody who's new? You know, you have to like look at like the quick glance, the silhouette, the here's an army on show, does it look different kind of thing. And yeah, if you focus on the vehicles and turn them more into like demon engine stuff, that would make sense. And there's definitely a lot of potential there. And like, yeah, they have done some of that before. So not completely in the dark and trying something new. Can't be doing that and making money.
I think this one is like definitely number one though, for like likelihood standpoint. I don't think any of these are like, this one's 90% sure the one.
Slam dunk.
But I think like of all of them, this one's at like 30%, which is very high in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
I do think it works well from a hole filling standpoint of, if you're going to build up a range, Chaos is the most anemic of the three quote unquote major super factions between Imperium, Chaos, and Xenos. That only works if you count all of Xenos as one thing, but that's how GW's website works.
Which is so...
I know. I'm not getting in it right now.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it from that standpoint, I think this one makes the most sense for them to do as the next big army. It also lets them pull the Year of Chaos card 6 more times while giving us a character each and then announcing an entire Space Wolves refresh. But anyway.
So the next one that would make sense...
First of all, how dare you for the subtitles that you put into our show notes.
I'm not wrong though, okay?
You aren't, but you are offensive. The second one on our most likely is Exodites.
Wood elves.
Yeah, Eric wrote Wood Elves. He's not wrong. He is an asshole.
This is something that like a lot of people want.
It is.
It's an aesthetic that is so missing in 40K.
Yeah, especially if you go for like an Aztec aesthetic or something like that. Think Seraphon from fantasy side of stuff here. There is already minor, very minor, but I know people like pointing it out, Native American and other influences within Eldar's styles. This lets you actually like go into it and make it something more flamboyant's the wrong word, but more overt.
Yeah, in focus as opposed to like, oh, here's a couple little things.
But Exodites, for those who don't know what they are, these are Eldar who are like even more anti-Eldar Empire than the Craft World were, who like left because everyone in the Eldar Empire was like the Drukhari. Exodites were like the fuck all this stuff, we're going back to nature hippie shit, we're gonna smoke pot in the woods and hang out with dinosaurs. That's what Exodites are, and they have dinosaurs with laser beams. I'm just gonna throw out dinosaurs with laser cannons.
So on that, some of the expectation of Exodites is slightly biased for us because dinosaurs with laser eyes. But I think enough people have brought up interest, and there were a couple rumors here and there that they were working on some like Exodite Knights or something like that. I don't think it panned out, but you know, maybe it was one of those, somebody was modeling something as a potential and it got shoved back, and oh, they'll bring it out of and see what's going on now.
I also would say this is one of the ones that does appear in lore semi-frequently, even right now. Probably the best-selling book since 2020 for all of Warhammer has been The Infinite and Divine, if I had to guess. But that has scenes with Exodites in it. Trazen gets eaten by a dinosaur.
Very fun scene. Definitely like a good selling point they could branch off even more with.
It It also works as a expansion of something where, like, you notice it with Votann in 9th edition. They had the awkward moment. This is something that anyone who has dealt with product stuff before understands what I'm about to talk about. But the internal GW guy wondering how we can maximize sales on risky new product, you don't have too much issue if it's something like Chaos and you can go like, we can weave it so that Chaos people want to go to the new Chaos army.
Right.
When Votann came out, I don't know if anyone remembers in Arcs of Omen, for some fucking reason, which we called out on the show and was extremely correct to call out, Votann was really played up as like they are best friends with Space Marines, hang out with them all the time. Here's rules for playing Votann with Space Marines. Space Marines and Votann, Space Marine players love Votann. Votann is awesome, right? You love Short King Space Marines, and that's what Votann is.
And it was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
It was so forced.
It was very. How do we get people to get into this new Xeno faction? Well, see, they're like best buddies with Space Marines, and you love Space Marines. Got 'em.
So that's why I think something like Exodites gets a lot over random new invention Xenos-wise, because there's less risk, because you can go, anyone who plays any variant of Elves, we can swing this. We can make soup rules. We can make it so that aesthetically it may please them as well, and also dinosaurs is just a really safe bet.
That's the thing, that the dinosaurs is one of those, like, that's something that you can paste on the cover and be like, yes, we've got a demographic locked the fuck in.
Yeah. Here's a dude in armor with a laser lance riding a velociraptor.
Yeah.
Everyone who was ever an 8-year-old
Yeah, basically.
is now in love.
Yeah. So I do think that altogether, it's an easier sell to have a new faction that isn't Space Marines.
And then from like the meta standpoint of like why we want to add this as opposed to any of the others on the list as GW, this builds up Eldar as a major pillar, which we talked about even back when we were doing like Dream New Factions. But even in that episode when we talked about it, this is how you build up Eldar as a major pillar on its own that is not just in the pile of Xenos, which I'm aware, I think in like, I did not play 7th. I think in like 7th edition, Eldar had its own super faction like setup.
It's possible.
Don't quote me on that. I've been looking at past editions for reasons.
But like out of any of the Xenos factions, Eldar would make sense to kind of like split off into being like its own super group.
Yeah, they're already 2 and 2 halves of a faction.
Yeah, I hate the fact that you're right.
So like if you expand it out, you could easily add Exodites, build up 2 others that we'll talk about later here, and end up with an equivalent of like the size of Chaos currently. Not that Chaos is the biggest super faction when compared to the monolith that is Imperium, but
it's still a reasonable place to be at. Yeah, I could see it working, especially with Exodites giving another large, unique flavor to the models and the lore and like the everything there, but also tying together enough so like it would work pretty well.
So they're basically like number 2 on likelihood here. I don't think any of these are like huge likelihood.
No.
Like left field is a solid 30 to 40% of this entire pie chart of like just make shit up. I do think this one does have the like extra sales pitch of like not just like bro it's dinosaurs, but this is the most Warhammer 40,000 advertisement. This is what Target Timmy thinks of when he thinks of Warhammer 40,000.
Just like what's the most extreme that you can do?
Let me take an idea from like fantasy settings, add future tech to it, and then crank everything up to a stupid like 11 out of 10.
Yeah.
And that's Warhammer in a nutshell. And that's what Exodites is. It's fucking space elves riding dinosaurs with laser guns. That's Warhammer, baby.
It really is. And there's also like the whole fact that because they have like Seraphon, there are something to build on for like the dinosaurs. They don't have to have everything made from scratch, kind of.
This is a very minor point, but it is one because I know this shit comes up in meetings because I've been in meetings all day. But you brought up they already have pre-existing stuff for Seraphon. And another benefit to that is going to be the paint division is going to be thrilled because Seraphon is one of the best candidates for contrast paints.
True.
So if you're trying to get a good sales pitch for a new contrast line, having it line up with this stuff is going to be a big win for you.
Absolutely.
It's not big in like the grand scheme of things, but like that comes up in a meeting. That's a real thing that happened.
Yeah, that's just another person that's in the meeting that's going to bat for this idea. And that matters.
Yep. Of like, hey, we're trying to expand this paint range right now. We're in the manufacturing process. If we can line all this up, this will be great because it'll increase sales numbers for this other sector of the company.
All those little things do actually matter. And like, we'll never see it because like that's, never publicly stated.
But this is the shit you sit in all day.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that could come up. So I guess, moving on from there, you had kind of talked about like fleshing out, the Eldar. And I think the Aeldari Corsairs kind of work pretty well on like encapsulating a lot of the smaller bits and pieces that are currently Eldar.
Yes. So Corsairs is an interesting one. We're into the honorable mentions, the not the top two. This is like our long list now.
Yeah.
These are less shot calls and more like at some point in the future, I will be 0% surprised if this gets announced as a getting larger or getting a full codex.
Or possibly they're going to use this as like a catch-all and they just needed a name to put certain things in there. And it's like, right, the Corsairs, that's what we'll call it.
Something that gets another kill team
Yeah.
like at some point, because obviously Corsairs started as a kill team for the modern sculpts. I think Corsairs is a really interesting one because, like you put in the show notes here, they're probably a good quote-unquote soup, your Imperial agents equivalent of you put them with Ynnari as your Imperial agents of Eldar, and you just go like, this is our nice catch-all book. This is where if you want elves to be friends with each other, the rules are here. And then you've got your individual codices for Exodites, Drukhari, and Asuryani.
And I do think that is actually a pretty big deal to have access to if we're going to try and like actually split off from the Xenos super group type thing. You have to have something that like allows for that full soup to really like lock everything in together.
Yes. I just think GW likes it in general because like while Imperial Agents is, like we said, it's not a real faction. It got a codex because now it exists and now they don't have to worry when they make their art piece kits.
Yeah.
They can just make a new Inquisitor model and know it will fit into an army of 40k.
And it just gives you a nice catch-all for anybody that wants to do a silly little list kind of thing.
Yeah. It's an artist's army. It's not something that you're going into the game wanting. It's something you're like, I've got all of these random releases from over time because they were these beautiful, weird kits that came out. Can I play all these together? It's like, yeah, it's that. It's not good, by the way. Don't worry, I don't give a shit.
Right. It's mostly because I want to show off my army and just happen to want to play a game. Yeah, so like Ynnari sort of kind of could have been that, but I think that's been shown to be shoved to the wayside.
They're... Everything with Eldar is.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know what the hell is with Eldar and GW. I don't know.
The thing with Ynnari is that requires like lore to actually build up, whereas Corsairs are just like, yeah, it's all good. They're just pirates. Whoever wants to join, hop on board.
And Corsairs lore-wise are like your easy blank slate because they're like, they go work with the Drukhari. They go work with the Craft Worlds. They work as an intermediary between the two. Half the time they hang out near Chaos. Half the time they hang out all sorts of places. They pop up everywhere. And it's just like, they're space pirate elves. They're everywhere.
So like, I think if you were trying to put together that like soup elf Eldari type thing, Corsairs is probably the tag that you would do just because it's like the easiest. And then you can just shove like Ynnari in there as like we don't know what the fuck we're doing with that yet kind of holdover. And obviously like they have a kill team for it. They have some aesthetics going on for like, here's your special art model. So it's not one of those like they have to figure it out from ground up. There's existing ideas.
We have to mention this before the boomers get mad. Corsair specifically has the boon of they used to have old Forge World kits from a forever ago that look terrible, by the way.
Oh, they're not that bad.
They are.
I mean, for what they are, they're not that bad. They're some of the better upgrade styles of that.
But there is that angle of like, these do have history within the game. Like they're not like a new idea. And that's a lot of the long list that we're getting into here. Actually, every one of the long list here are things that have existed in a non-zero amount throughout the history of the game and are likely candidates for expansion as a full army at some point.
Yeah, but again, not like, oh my god, it's gonna happen.
It's plausible. plausible. So getting into our next one, we have Renegade Space Marines. I actually feel like they're inevitable long term. I don't think they're next. I would actually put it really low for them being next in my head because that's not the use case I see for them. But in 15 years, I fully expect that at some point between now and then, these will have been a thing. Reasoning. So Renegade Space Marines are Space Marines who are not Imperium aligned, but are not Chaos aligned. These are people who got kicked out, ended up on the wrong side of Administratum bullshit happening, Bad Ab War, etc. These are your excuse to have Primaris Marines fighting Primaris Marines. These are a really useful tool from a lore standpoint. They're also really good if you bring back a shitload of Primarchs and you start wanting to have them get in kerfuffles with each other for the rest of time to sell new books and new war campaigns and stupid shit like that. This is cash money, baby. It also gives you options for non-chaos, non-Imperium aligned stuff, which works for some chaos armies.
That's true.
For people who prefer like old Iron Warriors where they were like, we would not use demon engines, we still use a fucking basilisk. For those types of people, then they would want to play their Iron Warriors under Renegade Space Marine rules. Or Alpha Legion would end up here, etc., where it's like, I can play both sides from this.
And I think that's great from unlocking some of that like lore, but not being locked into either Imperium or Chaos or whatever.
Yeah, and it's easy from a rule standpoint to support that then, of just when you're making your Renegade stuff, make the sneaky sub-faction and the machine-heavy sub-faction. Done and done.
Very generic.
Now people can do that if they want, or they can have their own Renegade squad of like their ragtag half a remaining chapter that's on the wrong side of the Eye of Terror, that's in Imperium Nihilist and has like zero support and is beset on all sides by bullshit happening, and they still get to be considered Renegade here.
So I think this one eventually, like you said, like 15 years from now or whatever, that would make sense. I think it's unlikely in the near future. This is one that I really don't think is going to happen in 11th because they already have so much that they can do with the current Space Marines. Those are the easy money. I don't want new Space Marine stuff that doesn't have any expectation. Let's just do more Space Wolves. We make shitloads of money, just make that.
I mean, 11th gets the freebie of like the Rhino and the Land Raider can be your big sales pitch of the beginning of 11th edition of here's your new ones. Here's your whatever kit is from 19-2 that they'll refresh as a Primaris era unit. And then you can go fix Blood Angels again for the love of Christ, please. But like they've got a bunch of free wins still, so they don't need to whip this one out yet. But as a tool, this one exists in the back pocket for when you're like, ooh, sales on Space Marines have been down 20% over the last edition. Crack it open.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And that's fine. Like, realistically, I'm okay with that. It's a perfectly fine way of unlocking, like, the non-Chaos, non-Imperium, but you still want to be Space Marines. And then, like you said, I hadn't thought of the, like, Primarchs just smacking each other around for fun. That could be some entertaining lore in the books.
Yeah, from a lore standpoint, it's such a free win for, like, infinite content for the rest of forever.
Yeah.
You literally just have misunderstanding, and now 3 of the Primarchs are considered renegades, and now them and the chapters under their control in their part of space are all considered renegades now. And now you end up being able to rotate that list and have events happen that mean nothing in the grand scheme of things, but everyone's going to be jizzing over it for 20 fucking years and telling you how great 14th edition was when it's 21st edition.
Yeah, I could absolutely see Renegade Space Marines at some point.
So moving on, back to Chaos, we have Traitor Guards. Lost in the Damned, Hereticus Militarum, Renegades and Heretics, however you want to say them.
Traitor Guard.
Traitor Guard. It's what we're going to call them. As we all know, the Astra Militarum, IG.
Obviously.
The Hereticus Militarum, TG.
Yeah, no, that works perfect. Just guard who fell to chaos. I guess one of the kind of neat things about it is like they're less monolithic following the Imperium and more like just following a warband. So like that could be a way to make it different from just IG with some spikes on it.
But it's a free win because you can just have it be IG with some spikes on it and make cash. Now, this one needs the asterisk of this previously existed. All the way up to like an 8th edition Forge World Index that got moved to Legends and is now very, very unplayable. But that's the whole Legends discussion of why kill something when you can say, no, we didn't kill this. We moved it to Legends. You can still play it until you don't notice you can't anymore. And then poof, we killed it and we didn't get blamed for killing it. We're geniuses.
So yeah, it did exist, but these are supposed to be new. But like if it hasn't existed for 2 editions now, then it's going to be new, right? It's brand new used.
Yeah. Also, I don't consider Forge World armies as having existed. From every single thing we've ever read on anything, all Forge World rules in 40k seem to have been not well liked by GW thing, we'll say.
Yeah.
There was animosity between teams on everything to do with Forge World crap. So Traitor Guard does currently have one kit that is in the CSM Codex just because they didn't know where to put it.
Which, totally fair, there isn't really a spot to put it right now.
Yeah, that's one where if the next one is actually Dark Mech, I expect it gets kicked over there until it exists or just dies, right?
I could see that, yeah. And then like maybe they'll sprinkle in a kill team here or there or something like that, and they just get tossed into one of those.
Yeah, but this one is obviously like lore-wise a large faction. Like there's more Traitor Guard than there are any other Chaos faction.
Oh yeah, this one's easy.
There's more Traitor Guard than there are most Imperium factions, other than Guard.
And like it's so easy to do the lore for it.
Yeah.
Wow, this planet was basically ruined by mismanagement, and now there's been an uprising. Oh my god, chaos.
It is the most used chaos trope of all time. It is how chaos functions in 40k straight up.
Which makes it kind of weird that we don't have Traitor Guard as a primary faction.
My reasoning for that is simply there's nothing to sell, so why make it?
That's true.
This is basically the like, let's make something to sell, make rules to sell it, and the thing that already exists in lore will exist. I still don't think this is anywhere near as possible as Dark Mech, which I just think would get them more money, which is why that is heads and tails above this one on likelihood.
Yeah.
But this one is a like long-term, if we're building up chaos over time, when we're doing all of our Imperium equivalents, ta-da, you get Traitor Guard.
Yeah, and like it wouldn't be that difficult to do. So even if it's not one of those like, holy shit, we're just gonna make bank and sell so much, it's like, oh, the opportunity cost is so low.
I do think a non-zero bump for this one, because this is also a meeting that definitely happens at GW and has probably happened 15 times, and I'm sorry if any GW employee listens to this and gets flashbacks to a meeting they were stuck in. I guarantee you that a bump on Traitor Guard's likelihood was caused by Trench Crusade.
Yeah.
Just because if you're a GW, you're going to want to stomp Trench Crusade out. They do not want competition. They want to be the only game in town.
No, you absolutely don't want to have competition. And like there's always been some up and comer trying to dethrone GW.
The next WoW killer.
Yeah. Very similar actually. But like Trench Crusade seems to have grabbed a lot of attention.
It'll be the Games Workshop killer for 2025 and 2026, and then we'll see if it exists in 2027.
And if it keeps doing 2027, 2028, GW could be like, haha, look at what I have, Traitor Guard.
Get out the grimmest, darkest, World War I-ist looking ass. And then we'll sue him into oblivion for doing our shtick.
And that could work pretty well. That's something that has been brought up. Absolutely.
This is every meeting that I have ever dealt with in the automotive industry has this aspect to it of, hey, someone's trying to get in on our game. Crush them.
Yeah. How do we make sure that that doesn't happen?
Something, 2-page rules 10th edition.
Oh, yeah. Very similar.
We'll talk about that again coming up in a new episode.
Probably. But like, let's talk about Legion of the Damned, because this was a thing as well.
It was one kit and will forever be remembered as a real thing. Yes, technically in N edition, it had a codex for that one kit.
I was going to say, there was an entire codex. I'm looking at a screenshot of it. I don't have any other proof that it existed, but it's there.
So Legion of the Damned is the other version of what I said with Exodites on the most 40k thing, because this is the most edgy 13-year-old faction to ever get made by someone in an actual job, sitting down and having to cook this thing up.
So when you were like trying to explain this to me, I understood it as like Deus Ex Machina, Space Marine ghosts.
Nailed it.
And that's actually what it is, not just like, haha, funny.
You likely didn't even understand what was happening, but they appeared in the Fall of Cadia book that we read. They show up for a scene where they're fighting and all of a sudden there was dudes on fire, ghosts, spectral, you don't even know if they're really there, who are fighting with them.
Yeah?
That's the Legion of the Damned. That's how they work.
Huh.
They're basically like, desperate moment, the Legion of the Damned is summoned up from the warp and helps as dead space marine skeleton men who are on fire and look super edgy, and then poof, they're gone again. And maybe they're dead, maybe they're not, maybe they're just damned. Roll credits.
So it's like the Ghost Army in Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Actually, you are so 100% correct. They did rip off Tolkien again.
I mean, shocking nobody.
Son of a bitch.
So I feel like this is probably not that, like, I don't think there's any expectation that this is really going to happen, but they did have a codex technically. It has a really fucking cool aesthetic.
No, it doesn't.
No, it does.
Fuck it doesn't.
This
No.
is so cool. Oh my God.
It's so fucking stupid.
No, this is where half the audience will be like, this is so fucking stupid, and the other half will be like, fuck you, this is the greatest, coolest, most 80s hair metal ass thing ever, and that's why I'm here. Exactly. Like, it's so dumb. It's so perfect.
It's the other side of Exodites. This is the most 40k thing. This is the other most 40k thing. These two aspects are the two sides of the coin of 40k, just being a mix of ripping off classic ideas and taking them to 11 and being edgy as shit for no reason.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think this could be a pretty easy, you don't have to fucking try.
Yeah, this is a free win. This is you don't make a faction, you don't make a codex, you make a codex supplement like you do with Blood Angels and Dark Angels. You release 3 kits and get a huge influx of people buying Space Marines so they can paint them up a new way.
Absolutely. It would work for a lot of people, I think, when they see this aesthetic. And they'd be like, all right, yeah, Space Marines maybe are kind of neat.
This is 100%, just like I said with the Renegade Marines, where they will for sure exist later on due to lore implications. It's just a free win for GW.
Yeah.
These will exist later on because it is such an easy way to min-max profit margin.
Oh, yeah.
This is you invest $20 and you get back 5 million, but like scaled up.
But like scaled up to company. Yeah, I could totally see that. And I mean, I don't know when they would do it. I don't think there's any particular like, oh, it would line up perfect in, this timeline. I think it's just like whenever they don't have a Space Wolves that they want to do or whatever, it's like, all right, here's a new one. Legion of the Damned.
Yeah, this is one where it honestly, like, I don't think it's high likelihood, right? But this is such a freebie that I would not be shocked if it showed up in 11th, right?
Yeah.
This is they did Dark Mechanicus. And because Chaos got something,
right,
we also got Legion of the Damned, which somehow got more fucking money put into it.
Yeah, I could honestly also see this used as one of the, like, we're kind of behind on schedule. We want to do a big release for a new faction, but we're not quite ready for this edition. We have to have something.
Yeah, you want to wrap up the edition, so you want to do a new faction, but something didn't work out. Legion of the Damned was enough to just be the placeholder for the edition. That could be a thing.
Yeah, and like it's enough of a thing that it's like, okay, yeah, it was a new faction. It came out, generated the hype needed at the time. Everything's okay. Make sure we nail it on the, like, we don't miss another deadline kind of thing.
Yeah, because for a history lesson of rumors, not even like a real history lesson, this is a more fascinating one if you did not follow leaks. During 9th edition, we got a very reliable set of leaks early in the edition that like even called out Votan. Like they said squats are coming back and everyone laughed.
I remember that now. Yeah.
But they nailed like 100% of things in this. And in that leak, they pointed out Eldar was set for a huge refresh of the entire range. That was going to be like a big thing on the tail end of 9th. However, something happened manufacturing wise with about half of the plates.
Yeah.
Where like they were having issues, it wasn't working, something, we don't know the details. We just know that issues occurred.
There was some manufacturing something.
So like half of the range refresh was not going to happen in in ninth. And then we got there and it wasn't a very big refresh in ninth. And obviously we got the other half of shit all in 10th.
Yeah.
And that basically lined up perfectly. And that's the type of thing where it's like, those happen when you deal with manufacturing. Your best laid plans, etc.
And like you try and have backups to make sure that you don't lose shareholder confidence.
Yes. These are all like the real sad parts of running a company. You're constantly dealing with the various angles of here's plan A, here's plan B, here's plan C for when plan A has a problem. Here's how we're going to push this quarter so that we can still make sure that shareholders don't get pissed off.
And like, here's how we can spin it if certain things line up. And like, yeah, it all does matter. And I think Legion of the Damned fits perfectly in that aspect to like, I don't think it's gonna be top priority for them to do on its own for no particular reason, but great back pocket.
And while I said we're not doing any range increases, we're not shot calling like a refresh or anything.
Yeah.
The one I'm adding to this list is Harlequins as our last one here.
You know, it's also doing the whole like not magical Christmas land thing.
Fuck you.
But yeah, no, Harlequins was a thing and they've basically been killed slowly.
Yeah, we watched them over 2 editions go from here's Harlequin's Codex with multiple subfactions to here's Harlequin's half a codex shoved in the Azurani Codex because it's 3 codexes in one. It's such a deal. To Harlequins gets 1 subfaction that's like a bonus to Harlequin units, and now they're just completely subsumed by Craftworld, unbirthed completely. We watched them murdered in broad daylight, and no one helped him.
Yeah.
But Harlequins is the last one on this list for me, which is the rebirth of Harlequins, some sort of rebranding, getting them to be a full faction again. I assume this only happens in the Exodites timeline. This is only done if we're refactoring all of Aeldari.
Maybe Corsairs, but even then, like Corsairs would probably just get Harlequins.
Right. Corsairs and Harlequins might end up as a book with Yonari as a step 1.
Yeah.
And then if you build up one of the factions again later, then you split off those 2 and have one be the soup one. And then you have your 4 classic elves in your Tolkien breakdown. You've got your high elves, your dark elves, your wood elves, and your clown elves, just as the man himself wrote.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he wrote.
I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings. I know all the books.
But I do think that is an expected breakdown that kind of works and would let Aeldari be like, hey, Eldar are a thing, and it's not just the Xenos, everything else. But I think Harlequins really has the problem of clearly they had an issue with Harlequins. Like something wasn't meeting expectation, and so they need to fix it. They need to find some solution to whatever that problem was before they try to do anything else.
It's one of the closed doors type things that I am most interested in learning.
Yeah, because like there's something.
I promise I won't judge you wrong for telling us the why. I just want to know, like, was it the paint scheme issue? We got rumors throughout, like we even got rumors at store levels of store clerks and stuff saying like we got ordered to send all of our Harlequin boxes back to the warehouse and not show any Harlequin stuff on shelves.
Yeah.
Because they do not want new players seeing Harlequin boxes. That was a thing in 9th edition before we got the official announcement they were being wrapped into the Azurani Codex.
There wasn't really a here's the exact reason why, but maybe it was the paint scheme.
Maybe they did you do polls for like why people bounced off your game, and you found that like 100% of people who had picked the I started with Harlequins button clicked the it was too hard for me to paint it the way I wanted.
Right.
And you're like, holy shit, Harlequins is fucking dumpstering us in this way. So you just nix them and like try to hide them as like a thing only for experienced people who are already sucked in and have sunk cost fallacy. I'm sorry, I'm not using my correct terminology. Who are invested in your IP now, not have sunk cost fallacy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's totally something I could see being like, that is from a business standpoint defendable. But like, if it is, there's an easy way to fix that by just changing your box art. So, like, there's obviously going to be solutions to whatever that problem was, but until that happens, Harlequins is not getting any limelight. It's just not happening.
No, but it is shocking that like Harlequins still regularly show up in lore, and they have very modern era lore stuff. It's so fucking weird how they're treated.
And like, everybody thinks they're cool, basically.
Yes, I feel like I know, but I don't know why this happened.
Yeah.
It's so interesting and sad.
Basically, yeah.
I feel this need to understand what went wrong. But you can feel free to comment on this episode about how this just turned into Backdoor wanting Harlequins back like you all knew it was going to when we clicked the button.
Yeah.
But yeah, realistically, that's our like 7 total here for options for the next faction in 40k. Most realistically, Dark Mechanicus and then maybe Exodites. Those are like the 2.
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to 11th edition giving us Dark Mechanicus and Exodites.
Clearly, that's what we're saying. Yes, both of those will definitely exist in 3 years. We definitely didn't warn how unlikely every specific scenario here is. Nope, take it out of context, put our names on it.
Too long didn't watch. This is the tagline.
They started with the one it absolutely is going to be. Why is this video an hour long? I have TikTok brain.
Yeah, and just another reminder, we've got the book club episode coming up. We're targeting like July 8th to be the episode, but I haven't started really reading it yet, so maybe we'll figure it out.
You may think that's far away from you if you're watching this the week it releases, otherwise it's much closer, or past. But just to put this in perspective, you have to, if you're listening to audiobooks, you have to listen to over 3 hours a week in order to get it done on time right now.
All right, I should probably start that. The book is going to be Elemental Council by Noah Van Nguyen.
Yes, we are reading Tau lore. From what we've heard, extremely good Tau lore, so let's find out.
Yeah.
So on that note, we can get out of here for the week. So join us in 2 days for the next episode because the Dataslate randomly dropped while we were editing this. I don't actually know that fact, but I feel it in my bones as we record this line.
It would be about right. So, sounds good.